Welcome to Fraud Friday. Today we're talking about Brandt Frost IV, a Georgia-based businessman accused of fraud by the SEC, running a Ponzi scheme. Brandt Frost is big in Georgia politics. His background was he served as the campaign director for televangelist Pat Robertson back in 1988 during his presidential campaign. His family has, quote, deep ties to conservative politics. His son, Brandt Frost V, is a former vice chair of the Georgia GOP, and his daughter, Katie Frost, chairs the party's 3rd District Committee. The Frost family has donated over $1.4 million to Republican candidates and causes nationwide, with more than $570,000 allegedly coming from the SEC, alleged by the SEC coming from investor funds for Liberty funding and loan. Now, before I get into the specifics, let's start with what Mr. Frost has to say. Quote, he has publicly acknowledged his wrongdoing, stating, I take full responsibility for my actions and am resolved to spend the rest of my life trying to repay as much as I can to the many people I misled and let down. The man is 67 years old. A federal judge has frozen First Liberty's assets, and a court-appointed receiver is working to recover funds. The case has prompted calls for political figures to return funds, and one Georgia official did. What Mr. Frost did, and what's interesting for this group, is his pitch was to lenders, hey, refer me your people who you're going to make a loan to, and I will make them a bridge loan, 18 to 20% interest. SBA lending can be a difficult, arduous process for the borrower, and it could take months for a loan to fund. So he felt that this would be a good niche for him to lend in. And what he did is he attracted funds from friends and family, up to $140 million. He promised these returns on his internet podcast, and he said that they promised a guaranteed return of 8 to 18%. Well, the SEC gets very picky when funds promise guaranteed returns. That, by definition, is a red flag, and there were all sorts of quotes that the SEC has said. Now, I want to take a step back. This is a criminal civil action complaint by the SEC. The agency did freeze the funds. We aren't in the criminal area yet. Following these cases, the criminal action indictments, if they occur, always lag behind the civil action. Mr. Frost was taking money out of the corporate accounts as recently as May. So the SEC moves very quickly in these type of situations. Unfortunately for Mr. Frost, he is not a very good lender. Up to 90% of these bridge loans defaulted and did not make the interest payments, i.e., reading between the lines, the SBA funding never came about. So the pitch to the investors was, hey, SBA, those are good loans. We're simply making the bridge loans, and you can make a nice 8 to 18% return. The unfortunate part about this, actually, if you go through the stats, in the first 2 years, there's the chart that we're going to put up. In 2019, 2020, on paper, it worked that the interest covered all of the expenses. Unfortunately, as the SEC says in their complaint, hey, remember, these people weren't paying the interest on paper. It was supposed to cover it, and then things went south, especially when Mr. Frost dipped into the funds where he made payments to himself and family members in excess of $5 million. As recently as May 24th, he withdrew $100,000 for his personal use. 9 days after the SEC interviewed him, he saw what was going to be happening. The 300 investors are concerned about the money. The average investment was about $500,000. The Friends and family were publicly advertised investments, generally had a 12-month term. He did market this to the Christian community, saying they were conservative investments, and the friends and family agreements paid a rate between 14 and 18%, regardless of the investment size. The SEC says beginning in 2021, when the fund began to go south, it then began operating as a Ponzi scheme where he was making interest payments based on new capital. The firm experienced a deficit beginning in 2021 through May 30th, 2025. Some of his expenses in 2019, he incurred $118,000 in credit card expenses, leaving just $65,000 to pay all other operating expenses. 2020, he racked up $234,000 in credit card expenses. 2021, the defendant's payroll expense exceeded the maximum revenue the defendants could generate by almost $200,000. 2021, $313,000 in credit expenses with a deficit over $500,000. Definitely in a situation where it was starting to spiral out of control. He thought, as always, these alleged fraudsters think they can make it up. And of course, it does not happen. Says the SEC, as of 2021, approximately 80% of interest and principal payments to investors were sourced from new investor funds, not from bridge loan interest payments, the classic definition of the Ponzi scheme. In reality, when selling these investments, Frost told investors and borrowers to whom First Liberty, first of all, you got to love that name, First Liberty, building and loan. What is that? Right out of It's a Wonderful Life. In fact, few, if any, bridge loan borrowers had received pre-approval from an SBA loan at the time the bridge loan was funded. And that was the key. He said, we're going to go pre-approvals. And then he did. So I find it interesting. He did make the loans, but he chose very poorly who made the loans, because people who made the loans to 90% of the time did not pay them back because they didn't pay them back. Until First Liberty shuttered operations in 2025, the investors did receive monthly payments, but that soon stopped when they ran out of funds. These are some of the purposes of what he spent the money on. $230,000 to rent a vacation home for his family in Kennebunkport, Maine. I'm not an expert on Kennebunkport real estate, but it seems like maybe he should have purchased something at least but he didn't. Between 2019 and 2025, Frost used over $140,000 in investor funds to purchase jewelry, and also the obligatory $20,800 for the Patek Philippe watch, and $335,000 to a rare coin dealer. Why jewelry and coins? Very easy to convert to cash. I guess you can. Coins, you may argue, it's an investment, but the purpose of a lot of this jewelry purchases by these con artists, diamonds, are easily convertible to cash through nefarious sources. He also used $2.4 million to credit cards for him and all his business entities, and he had a couple of other business entities that he had to siphon funds to. So overall, it was $5 million that were done. And then the SEC, this was filed in July 10th. SEC says in the last 8 months, Frost has been dissipating assets at a rapid pace. He saw what was happening, and contrary to his statement that he was sorry and he will spend the rest of his time on the earth to attempt to repay the investors, he was certainly not doing that in the first 8 months of 2025, alleged the SEC. From October 2024 through April 2025, Frost wrote checks to himself for $1.3 million. And so Liberty Building and Loan is defunct. Investors are, the losses in the fund totaled about $6 million, probably more. The receiver will try to go through and claw back at least the interest on the loans from the people who defaulted. Good luck with that. And another sad tale, and really what were the red flags? You have a fund that's guaranteeing a return. In this case, it was guaranteeing returns of 8 to 13% or 8 to 18%, regardless of how the fund operated. And whenever you see a guaranteed return, especially under the guise of, hey, earn Wall Street interest rates at Main Street investments, we've heard that before of other Ponzi schemes that look, if you could get a guaranteed 18% return, a lot more people would be doing that. And the line is, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Mr. Frost IV is facing some difficult times. Unfortunately, his investors are facing also difficult financial stress in their lives. And it's an unfortunate situation all the way around. I'm Bob Coleman. Thank you for joining us for Fraud Friday.